It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Rob Sharkey, the shark farmer, as he's known across the United States and internationally, I would think. Rob, I want to say welcome to you, and I'm going to do a brief introduction. Rob Sharkey is a fifth-generation Illinois farmer, and he is host of the Rob Sharkey Shark Farmer podcast. And you also have a related Shark Farmer radio show on Sirius XM. Seriously. So you focus on raw, unfiltered conversations about agriculture, often blending humor, sarcasm, and I love this, and it's true because I've listened to your podcast, this tough love aspect of it. Episodes especially feature interviews with individuals directly involved in farming, ranching, and the broader ag industry, emphasizing real-world challenges and innovations and personal stories. Guests are rarely high-level executives or celebrities. Instead, they represent the boots on the ground. That's a term that we use a lot or often in Farm Bureau land, and I know you guys do too.
Absolutely.
Every day, so it's everyday producers, advocates, and disruptors, so to speak, who share honest takes on topics like mental health, marketing, diversity, and industry hurdles. And in agriculture, we have plenty of those. Rob interviews farmers and ranchers from diverse backgrounds. It could be small-scale or family operations, sharing gritty stories such as Jamaican farmer Nels Leo, Arkansas farmer Dalton Dildine, and others. The podcast airs new episodes weekly every Tuesday. So I'm telling listeners, listen to Rob on Tuesday and listen to Fill Your Plate Now on Thursdays when we drop. And you keep it fresh. You tie it to current ag events. And right now, as of this moment, you have had 501 podcast episodes to date, which means, Rob, Tammy and I have a long way to even get close to catching up with you. So welcome, and thank you so much for participating and being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's good to talk to you again, and it's nice to meet you, Tammy.
Nice to meet you.
So we're going to launch right into our questions. One of the first ones I've had is you've built this brand on the Shark Farmer by shaking up kind of the status quo. And, you know, you've even kind of attacked the sacred cows, so to speak. So how have you handled this, and how's it evolved?
You know, it's amazing how much things have evolved since 2016 when we started. You didn't really, back then, ag media was basically the weather, it was the markets, and then maybe they would talk about some new practice. And then when we came in, we started talking with, real people in agriculture, the farmers, the ranchers, the hired men, the truck drivers, all the people that help get food onto people's plates. And we would talk about their lives. And sometimes, people's lives are not fairy tales. And we started talking about some of the struggles that they had. And, I think the first big one I remember was alcoholism. We talked with a rancher that he was an Olympic athlete. And when he went back to the ranch, he struggled, right? Because in his words, he went from being the big man on campus to, now being a nobody is what he thought. So he turned to alcohol, and it about killed him numerous times. And he talks about overcoming that. And I remember putting that out there and getting a ton of hate over it because people did not want to hear that coming from farming. I remember messages like, we don't talk about that in ag. That's not what farmers do. You need to be putting positive stuff out there and not the negative stuff. But then, as many messages there, we had more messages, people saying, I really needed to hear this. I'm struggling with this. Nobody talks about this. My spouse is struggling with it. So, yeah, alcoholism. Then we went into, mental health, and then that spider web of people not wanting to talk about that. So there's been several issues. But, that first one, talking about alcoholism, that was an eye-opener.
It sounded like it was a clarion moment for you to realize And that's kind of been not just your shtick, so to speak, but what's been important is to talk about those topics that other people were not tackling. That's one of the reasons I've always been impressed by what you do.
Well, I think there's also just that little red barn image and the rolling green hills and a very stereotypical, traditional image. And oftentimes our consumers aren't that close to farming and so really don't understand all the hard parts of it and everything that goes into it. I love that you're a fifth-generation farmer. I work for the dairy industry and also multi-generational and with multi-generational, a lot of times there's a lot of tradition. But I know you're known more as being a disruptor. Has that ever caused conflict or heated discussions with family and friends because you're really giving another side to all of this?
Not so much. My family. My family is my biggest supporter. For anybody that is not familiar with what I do, I am a running mouth. I just talk. My wife is the one that does the business side of it. She's much smarter and better looking than I am. So if you ever take anything away from me, it's just always marry up. But as far as my friends and stuff, not really. I can't say there's been any huge conflicts. Definitely. Friends would say when they disagreed with either a guest or an opinion that I had, and we would have discussions about it, and that's, to me, what we're supposed to do in life. I don't know why we've gotten away from that as a society, but even in the last 10 years, you've seen I can't disagree with you without you being on one side and me being on the other, and we got to prove each other absolutely right or absolutely wrong, and I don't know, it's sad to see.
It is. And I like that you're willing to wade in and discuss, even if the guest or whoever you might be talking to has a completely different opinion. If we don't hear each other's opinions, then we're really going to have a struggle. Moving to another kind of format, and that you actually travel all over the country and you'll speak to different groups. I think in 2017 or 2018, we had you as our keynote speaker at our annual meeting, which Arizona Farm Bureau hosts always in November. Do you, because partly it's a different format, do you ever come with a focused theme, or is there also always a philosophy that you're carrying with you when you talk to groups live, so to speak, or face-to-face?
Well, if we go and speak to a group, there are certain things that I want that group to know going into it. Number one, that I'm going to, be myself. Which is an imperfect human being, a Christian, and someone that is very passionate about agriculture. When the speaking started to kind of take off to where we're like, this is a significant part of our life, we tried to continually evolve that speech, because we have a saying, one good speech will get you two. So if you go and you give a good speech, then you're going to be going back to that area, going to be going back to that state, probably going to be having people in that audience that has heard your speech before. So we want to continually evolve it. We have made completely different speeches and for places that we went back the second year. But in general, when someone hires us, they want that shark farmer story. And in a nutshell, basically how we went to the verge of bankruptcy, clawed our way out, and then how the shark farmer started. And that seems to be what the people that hire us want. And it's generally somebody that's heard us before.
How many speeches are you giving in a given year?
Somewhere around 50 to 60.
Wow.
Yeah, that is an impressive number. You are probably not home that much. It sounds like you're on the road quite a bit.
It's nice. We've got one kid in high school still. Stephen is a junior. But Emily goes with me on 90% of the speeches, which I think is key.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I know, earlier you did mention, and I wanted to kind of come back to this, mental health issues. I mean, with all the ups and downs of farming, there is no wonder there are mental health issues, depression issues. you've had speakers on in the past that have talked about that. Could you tell us a little bit about what some of the most common issues are related to mental health and ways that they've learned to combat that?
Mental health, I am not a professional in. And I remember the first time hearing people talk about mental health in agriculture, and it was making sense to me what they were saying. And it was making sense in a way that I didn't agree with before hearing their story. Before I started doing the podcast, if you would talk to me about suicide, I would say it was an extremely selfish act that people do. I no longer feel that way because I have talked to people that tried and failed, and to hear what their mindset was at that time. It's something that you don't want to talk about. It's something that, you might have to bleep the word out of the podcast to get it on YouTube. Some people just don't want to touch that issue, but we have to. Look at the industry that we're in and the suicide rates that farmers have. We have to talk about this stuff. You talk about anxiety, you talk about panic attacks, you talk about depression. And again, before doing the podcast, I'd probably be rolling my eyes at it. But then you hear people's stories. I do think, it's kind of tough to talk about, but I think it prepared me for, situations in my life. You Google my name, and the first thing that comes up is what happened to Rob Sharkey's son. We lost our son very publicly. He was in a car wreck, and now I understand what a panic attack is. Now I understand what debilitating anxiety is. And I don't think I would have been able to handle it if I didn't talk to these people beforehand. So that it is uncomfortable as it is sometimes. It makes me realize if people are hearing this and then they go through it for the first time. I remember the first time I had a panic attack after I lost my son. I didn't know what was going on, but after talking to people that have had it, at least I was able to handle it.
Rob, our condolences to your son. And I do remember that, and I remember how beautifully you and your wife handled it. And there's nothing easy about the loss of a child. Thanks for sharing that and allowing us all to realize that there is hope. There's people that you can lean on. And even when things emerge that you would have never dreamt of or imagined, there is hope and there is help. And I, like yourself, am a Christian, so we rely on our faith, but we have to rely on people and we have to remember their stories because that can be our encouragement. So thank you for sharing that. Innovations in agriculture, especially from those innovators. You've talked to them. Again, they're still the boots on the ground type of people. Do you feel some of the innovations today in agriculture are going to help us save the family farms and or the small farms, or do you feel like some of these innovations are kind of leaving some of our core farmers, whether that's the family farm or a smaller farm, in the dust because they're hyper-focusing on maybe quote-unquote big ag? Any insights there based on who you've talked to?
Yeah, that's not a loaded question at all.
We got to toss a few of those in.
One of the people that yeah, exactly. One of the people that I interviewed was a bigger name, is Al Myers. He was the owner of Ag Leader. He still runs the company today. And I remember, talking about the philosophy that he has on you can utilize technology even on a small level. You don't have to be the biggest farmer in the world to use his products. I farm. I have all the guidance. I have all the mapping. I have all that stuff that you see there in the magazines and that. And I don't need it. I could farm without it. I choose not to. But I think even at any level, the technology, the good thing about it is the pricing seems to go down fairly quickly. And you're able to utilize it, I would think, at about on any level. Even, the older style equipment, you can still put guidance on. You can put guidance on basically anything anymore. So I think the technology, like probably since the dawn of whoever invented the shovel, you have to be careful of, is it going to actually have a return of investment on your farm? I've been guilty of wanting shiny stuff and wanting the newest toys and buying them, and then a year later going, well, that really didn't pay for itself. But hey, you're going to make some mistakes in life.
You know, and speaking of farming, you have been amazing for agriculture with the media world and all that you have done to inform consumers and talk to others in agriculture about farming. Tell us a little bit about how you can balance all that. I don't know, when you're on the road as much as you are, how do you balance that with the farming that you're doing?
Well, the biggest thing is my oldest son has come back to the farm, William, and he's doing a fantastic job about learning and picking up the slack and taking this farm to the next generation. So that's the biggest help. We have been able to utilize some of the money we've made from the media side to upgrade the farm equipment, which gets things done quickly, and that seems to be our key. There was spring. We try not to schedule things in the planting season and the harvest season. And we had it, even from like April 1st to, the end of May, where we would schedule nothing. And then Emily would come to me and she says, well, these are the things that we didn't do. And you add up the money that we lost in doing that. And it's like, man, that can upgrade planting equipment quite a bit. So do I have oversized equipment for the acres that I farm? Yes. Is it on purpose? Yes, because we want to get done quickly. We want to get done safely. That's another thing. It's just a two-man operation. So William and I just want to pound it out, work as hard as we can for those little bits, and then we get back to the media side.
And speaking of getting back to the media side, the podcast, the Sirius XM now, you're giving what sometimes is classified as that sarcastic but certainly honest voice in ag, and oftentimes you're being really frank, and sometimes there has to be a degree of criticism, whether that be, what's not being talked about. How have you handled some of this criticism, and has it also been the inspiration of maybe a next episode? And talk a little bit more about that.
There's legit criticism that comes through often. Why aren't you talking about this? Are you afraid to talk about that? Are you not talking about this because you're advertising with that company or this company? Very legit criticism that I listen to. Now the mean stuff, it's like water off a duck's back. I don't even pay attention to it. So if you ever seriously want us to listen to something you got to say, I would just say it nicely, and we'll be more than happy to listen to it. No, several times we have had people say, I feel like you're avoiding this topic. And then we look at that topic. A lot of times I'm able to say, oh, well, we'll look at episode whatever. And that's exactly what we talked about. And we throw so much content out there that, not everybody's going to be able to absorb it all. But, we've hit the controversies, like we talked about the alcohol, the mental health. It's funny. One of the things we got probably the least amount of feedback on was the homosexual farmers, which is kind of a rarity. The guy was also a Trump supporter. That's the hate we got off that one. It wasn't. So, it's funny. I think it's hard not to accept somebody if they honestly tell you why they're doing what they do. If you talk to a vegan and they're telling you, I don't eat meat because I had stomach issues and then I cut out meat and now I feel better. There's 100 holes in that argument, but now I know why they did it. I get it. And it's hard not to accept why somebody did something if they're going to give you an honest account of why they did it.
That's a very good point. I think so often we don't listen like we should.
Right.
We have our points to get across and we don't hear the other side like we should. And I think that makes a huge difference in bringing people together. I love your podcast. It's amazing. You do a fantastic job. And, that is really a gift to be able to communicate to others and be entertaining and draw people in. Have you always been able to do that, or is this something that's developed over time? How did you get started with media and public speaking?
One of the things that we used to do was I was a white-tailed deer outfitter. My son has now taken that over, but I had Hunter come in and she did a podcast, and I didn't even know what a podcast was back then. But the more she talked about it, the more I'm like, okay, this could be kind of fun. So we were going to talk about hunting stories that happened in the hunt camp. And she's like, start 5 of them. So that way, if someone listens to it and they want to go to the next one, they can listen to another one. So we launched 5, and 2 of them were hunters and 3 of them were farmers. And the 3 farmer ones took off, just absolutely took off. The hunting ones, what I learned is if you weren't at hunt camp and you didn't know the people, it was not funny or entertaining or anything. It just wasn't there. So agriculture is my main passion, so we just pivoted and haven't looked back.
And that might be part of it, is what is your passion? And for my question, which is for the young up-and-coming farmers, and maybe they are tired of the echo chamber that's out there, especially a lot of the misinformation, and others co-opting stories that aren't really theirs. Do you have a playbook for someone that might be, okay, I can never be the shark farmer, but nor should they be, because that's your brand, obviously. But a playbook or some insights for the young farmer that's saying, yeah, it's time for me to step up to the mic or to step up to the podium?
Yeah, you should never try to emulate anybody else. And you see that online so many times. When someone comes up to me, and I know they mean it as a compliment, but they're like, oh, you're the next generation's, Max Armstrong. And I'm like, thank you, but I'm not. Max he was completely different. He was more of a reporter. I mean, there's just no comparison. So honestly, you don't know what the next thing is going to be. So I think time you're emulating someone, it's already too late. You just have to be authentic. That old or that cartoon Ratatouille. What's they say? A great chef can come from anywhere, and anywhere could be a great chef. I'm butchered that, but the bottom line is, the next person out there that's going to be able to influence people can come from anywhere. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're from Illinois or California or Arizona. What you're doing is interesting, and if you find a way to communicate that out there. We just interviewed an old boy who was a dairy farmer from Wisconsin he just sits there and talks, and people relate with him. So I'm so surprised that people relate to him, because he talks so deep into farmer-ese. He's talking, he's not talking to the non-farming public, but he's amassed this huge following of people that don't know anything about agriculture, but now they have a face to put with dairy. It's just amazing to me, some of the people that have been able to connect with the audience. Some of them able to, go out there and kind of rant and throw the F-bombs like I know you guys do on your podcast. Some of them
He's been listening.
Are able to talk. Some of them don't, and just are themselves, and you just never know what's going to hit. But all these people that you see that are being successful, generally they're authentic.
To me, that point of authenticity is the most critical, and I love that you have said that, because I think that can inspire a lot of our young farmers and ranchers to say, okay, I just need to be me. The reality of it, the being me is my brand. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, and I think, that authenticity, that's what our consumers want to hear too. I mean, they don't understand agriculture. We have so few people in agriculture. They love having that inside look at what's really going on. And, you do such a good job at communicating that out. Any plans as far as futuristic ideas in terms of media, television, streaming shows? What are your future plans in taking these messages further?
Again, you want to be so open to what's next. I started on Twitter, which is now X, and that's kind of went away, and then it came back, and meantime, YouTube has taken off. TikTok is crazy. Here we are. We're on Dish and Direct with Shark Farmer TV at RFD TV. You see the numbers of people that are still on Dish and Direct. I'm so thrilled and blessed to be on there. But it does make you kind of look to what's next. We got a call from PBS, which I got to admit I wasn't real keen on. I didn't even know PBS was still around. But my wife was like, we need to go talk to them because you never know what's going to lead to what. Long story short, we went in, we talked with them, and when we walked out, we decided we're going to be doing a new show called A Shot of Ag on our local PBS. And it's basically kind of just a sit-down interview with me and a person from agriculture. Sometimes it gets outside of ag. And I've never been more surprised about the reaction of anything that we've ever done than that PBS show. We have a national television show on RFD. We have a national radio show on Sirius. We get more reaction from this local PBS show by far than those national shows. And it's been, we've been mentioned on the Senate floor when they were talking about, for the only show that was mentioned on the Senate floor when they were talking about funding of PBS. And now PBS has come to us and they're like, we think this should be offered nationally. So we're in the process of that. So I don't know. I don't know if PBS is our future. It's hard to tell. We're going to keep a lot of options open. The thing that I like about the podcast is it's 100% mine. I own it. I'm doing it. And, think about that. Nobody can take it away from you. And, business-wise, it's probably the easiest to sell. So I don't see not doing the podcast. I still enjoy it. But as far as the other stuff, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I would say PBS is probably the future.
Oh, we'll look forward to seeing that. That would be fantastic.
And congratulations for them picking you up.
Yeah.
It's obviously proving the power of what you're doing and your reach. Tammy just asked the futuristic question, so I'm going to ask the looking back question. Is there anything in all of this, and you're willing to have that conversation and willing to become the shark farmer, that you would have done differently?
Differently. That's always a tough question, is what you would change, because all the decisions you made led you to where you are now. So I'm happy with that. I think I drug my feet getting into the video aspect of podcasting. We've been doing it here for almost 2 months. I'm still very uncomfortable with it. I'm used to what I'm used to, and I like just to talk into a microphone and not look into a camera. But I probably should have done that sooner. But as far as anything else, lots of mistakes, but any mistake that you learn from is not a mistake.
So just a piece of advice on that. Tammy and I started out with the audio and the visual of this, so we always upload these podcasts also on YouTube. Our biggest worry is, how does our hair look? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, these darn headphones, they mess with it every time. I'm sure you've had that problem, right?
No, never.
But, one thing, too, I love, coming from a nutrition background as a registered dietitian and then working in agriculture, we really, really try to do that farm gate to plate sequence, because we really want the consumers to understand more about agriculture, but also, how all that helps them and helps them to be healthier. Any advice to us on how we can help make those worlds collide even further and really get that messaging across of farm gate to plate?
There is a fine line between talking down to the non-farming public and not talking farmerese. Our very first PBS show that we did, we talked to a person, and the crux of the show was a PTO accident. And it was a good show. And afterwards, the producer came out, and she was like, I don't get what you guys just talked about. And I couldn't understand. She's like, I don't understand how someone gets hurt from paid time off. And this is not a story. This was legit. And it made me realize right then that, all right, I'm talking to a different audience right now. And, okay, we got to say power takeoff instead of PTO. AI is not an artificial insemination. So there is a fine line. But we don't talk down to them. When we do the man on the street interviews in Nashville, where we show them, like a picture of a hay baler, and they think it's a Zamboni, it's just kind of fun to see what people don't know about agriculture. When we're done, we can't get rid of people, because once they find out that we're a farmer, they just keep asking questions. They want to know about everything that I do. They want to know where their food comes from. They are interested, and they just have not been educated on it. But we have such a benefit that people want to know about what we do. That's huge. And if you can tap into that, that's going to be a key to success.
Rob, it reminds me of this happened to me so often. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Fresh Air, which, by the way, you can purchase on Amazon.com. But when they'd find out that I grew up on a farm and that I worked with my parents through 2005, they would completely forget everything else that we were discussing, and they would hyper focus on the agriculture or the farming experiences. And I thought, American consumers, Americans in general, love farming and ranching. That's what we need to talk about. So your story, your experiences is the same. It's absolutely, when they find out that you're a farmer, you're a real farmer, you're the shark farmer, they pivot to the focus, and they want to learn as much as they can. And Tammy and I also, by the way, have become very sensitive about when our industry people use acronyms. We pause them and say, okay, what that acronym stands for is, and sometimes I've had to ask the guests because I didn't know what that acronym was. But
Well, there's been times when you were talking about acronyms, the first time I sat in on a lecture about AI, I didn't realize that was artificial insemination until about halfway through the lecture. So I understand that consumer viewpoint, too.
yes, absolutely. So, well, we've kind of plowed through, metaphor intended, we've plowed through these questions we had for you. I have always been privileged to hear your insights through your podcast. It's exciting to hear that some of these platforms for you are scaling. So we've gotten an update on that. But knowing our audience and knowing, as Tammy said earlier, we're farm gate to plate, would you give our listeners some kind of takeaway based on the things that we've discussed? Whether it's the farmer that might say, you know what, I need to be in front of the mic more, at the podium more, and or for our non-farm and ranch families that are listening to this. Any key takeaways that you'd give to us, Rob?
In agriculture, I'm going to argue that we are farmers. Ranchers are under 1% of the population. I know that number floats around, but the point is there's not many of us. So it needs pretty much all of us that are actively involved to be doing something. Now, does it mean to pick up your phone and get on YouTube? Maybe. Does it mean you should volunteer at the local ag day like we have here, where we have all the fourth graders in the county come through and they go through different sections of agriculture? Maybe. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Even taking time to talk to a neighbor or a relative that doesn't quite understand stuff. But the key in my mind, and what I've learned over all these years of doing this stuff, is to listen more than you talk. When we first started doing the podcast, the first episodes were horrendous. They're horrible, but we were surviving off the novelty of nobody knew what podcasts were and all this stuff. And then we'd have a good one. And then, we'd have another good one. And back then, I had a program that it recorded in two different tracks. So you had my track and you had the guest track. And what I started to notice is that these podcasts that I liked more, I was talking less. And if I got down to where I'm talking maybe 20% of the time and the guest is talking 80% of the time, those were the better podcasts. Because I used to just have a list of questions, and I would plow through, and then when I would edit it, I would listen to what they said. I'm like, well, why didn't I ask about that? And the truth was, as they were talking, I was sitting there looking at the next question, right? And I wasn't actively listening to what they were saying. So nowadays, Emily will get like, tell me, 3-4 things you want people to know about for sure after listening. And then we go from there. And then we generally just rabbit trail. And those rabbit trails are the majority of the time a lot better than what we actually asked for questions, because I'm sitting there actively listening to what they talk. I'm not playing a video game on the side. I'm not twiddling my thumbs. I'm actively listening to what they're saying. And if you do that, people are going to tell you what they really want to know, even if they're not just flat out telling you. If they want asked about this, they're going to leave some sort of hint in what their answer is before. So the more you listen, I think the more their defenses are going to go down, and the more they're going to reciprocate listening. Not always. We all know that person that never stops talking. But for the most case, I think the more you listen, the more you're going to have a more mutual, beneficial conversation. And it might be awful one-sided on their side to start with, but I think at the end, you both can kind of get your points across and both understand each other in a better way.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One thing, too, that you're providing for so many of us in agriculture is that platform, is that forum, because you are correct. Someone may not take on the podcasting element, but if you hear about a fascinating farmer and rancher that with a critical topic that you're trying to cover, they can go on the Shark Farmer. And I love it when you reach out to me via text and say, Julie, who else should we be interviewing? And oftentimes I'll give you some leads. And I love it when he interviews our Arizona farmers and ranchers. So the fact that you're providing these kind of forums and you're listening and you guys are having a transparent, earnest conversation is making a difference for agriculture, for our American families across the United States.
And I'm looking forward to seeing that PBS series.
Especially if they scale it national. So they're kind of indicating to you that they're going to scale it nationally.
I tell you what, I know more about PBS than I ever should. There's 350 PBS stations in this country, and they use 41 different formats.
Oh.
And so you've got to take our program, put it to the highest format, and then you have to do it 41 different ways, which takes time. So yes, not just in Arizona, but anybody that's listening to, hopefully within the next couple months, if you want to approach your local PBS station and say, hey, we've heard of a good agriculture program we'd like to see on ours.
We'll do that,
Will
Rob.
do.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. This has been fun chatting with you and getting caught up. And we know we're going to be crossing each other's paths more and more. So let's stay in touch.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate
Absolutely.
you being on today.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.